Love often feels most intense, not when it is stable, but when it is uncertain, unpredictable, and just slightly out of reach. This might seem contradictory at first, because people assume clarity and consistency should naturally strengthen emotional connection over time. But the human mind does not always respond to emotional safety with intensity. Instead, it often responds more strongly to emotional uncertainty. In that uncertainty, the brain becomes more alert, more focused, and more emotionally invested in outcomes that feel unresolved or incomplete. One of the main reasons love feels stronger under uncertainty is the way the brain processes reward and anticipation. When affection is predictable, the emotional system adapts quickly, and the intensity of feeling begins to stabilize and normalize over time. But when affection is inconsistent, the brain enters a state of heightened anticipation, constantly trying to predict the next emotional outcome. This anticipation activates stronger emotional responses than certainty, making small moments of connection feel disproportionately meaningful and powerful. Uncertainty also increases emotional focus, because the mind naturally fixates on what it cannot fully understand or control. When someone's feelings are unclear, every message, silence, or change in behavior becomes emotionally significant and open to interpretation. The brain begins analyzing patterns that may not even exist, searching for meaning in small signals that might otherwise feel insignificant. This constant mental engagement strengthens emotional attachment, not necessarily because of connection itself, but because of unresolved psychological tension. Another reason love feels stronger in uncertainty is due to intermittent reinforcement, a psychological pattern where rewards are given inconsistently. When emotional rewards appear unpredictably, the brain becomes more motivated to pursue them because each moment carries the possibility of reward. This creates a cycle where emotional highs feel extremely intense, especially after periods of distance, silence, or emotional withdrawal. The inconsistency itself becomes emotionally stimulating, even when it also creates anxiety, confusion, or emotional instability over time. Uncertainty also amplifies imagination, and imagination often becomes more powerful than reality in shaping emotional experience. When someone is not fully available or fully understood, the mind fills in gaps by creating idealized versions of who they might be. This imagined version often feels more perfect, more meaningful, and more emotionally aligned than the real, incomplete interaction itself. As a result, the emotional bond becomes partly rooted in fantasy, which strengthens attachment beyond what reality alone would sustain. Another factor is the role of emotional scarcity, where limited access to affection increases its perceived value and importance. When love is not consistently available, each moment of attention feels rare, significant, and emotionally amplified beyond normal levels. This creates a perception that uncertainty is depth, even when it may simply be inconsistency or lack of emotional clarity. Uncertainty also activates the attachment system in the brain more intensely, especially in individuals who are sensitive to emotional distance. When emotional availability fluctuates, the nervous system becomes hyper-aware of separation and more reactive to small signs of disconnection. This can create a push-pull experience, where emotional longing increases during absence and intensifies during brief moments of connection. The relationship begins to feel emotionally consuming, not because of stability, but because of continuous activation of attachment responses. There is also a psychological phenomenon where uncertainty increases emotional investment simply because more effort is required to maintain hope. When something feels difficult to secure emotionally, the mind often justifies continued investment by increasing emotional importance and meaning. This creates a loop where effort, waiting, and emotional endurance are interpreted as signs of deeper love or stronger connection. In reality, effort is being mistaken for compatibility, and emotional struggle is being mistaken for emotional depth or significance. Uncertainty can also intensify emotional memory, making experiences feel more vivid and emotionally charged than stable interactions do. The brain tends to remember emotionally intense moments more clearly, especially when they are associated with unpredictability or longing. As a result, brief moments of closeness during uncertain relationships often become exaggerated in memory and emotional importance over time. These memories then reinforce attachment, making the overall emotional experience feel deeper than it may actually be in reality. Another reason love feels stronger in uncertainty is because clarity removes imagination, and imagination is a major driver of emotional intensity. When everything is known and consistent, there is less space for projection, fantasy, or emotional interpretation of hidden meaning. But when uncertainty exists, the mind continuously constructs possibilities, stories, and emotional narratives around incomplete information. This mental storytelling becomes part of the emotional experience, often intensifying feelings beyond what direct reality would produce. Uncertainty also creates emotional tension, and human beings are naturally drawn to resolving tension in psychological and relational contexts. When emotional situations remain unresolved, the mind becomes preoccupied with finding closure, answers, or reassurance from the other person. This preoccupation can be mistaken for deep love, when it is often a response to unresolved emotional ambiguity and cognitive discomfort. The desire for resolution keeps emotional attention locked in place, strengthening attachment even in the absence of stability. In some cases, uncertainty feels stronger because it mirrors early emotional experiences where love was inconsistent or unpredictable. When emotional patterns from childhood involved irregular attention or affection, the nervous system may associate uncertainty with emotional significance. As a result, stable love can sometimes feel unfamiliar or even emotionally dull compared to unpredictable emotional experiences in adulthood. This creates a pattern where intensity is preferred over stability, even when stability would provide greater emotional safety and peace. Uncertainty also creates a sense of emotional urgency, where the fear of loss becomes tightly connected with the feeling of love itself. When availability is unclear, the possibility of losing connection becomes more emotionally active in the background of every interaction. This fear intensifies emotional attachment, making each moment feel more important because it might be temporary or uncertain in duration. Love becomes intertwined with anxiety, and the emotional system struggles to separate connection from the fear of losing it. However, not all intensity created by uncertainty reflects healthy or sustainable love in the long term. Emotional instability can produce powerful feelings, but intensity alone does not guarantee emotional safety, mutual understanding, or lasting connection. Over time, relationships built on uncertainty often create emotional exhaustion because the nervous system remains in a constant state of alertness. What initially feels like passion can gradually become emotional strain if clarity and consistency never develop within the connection. The deeper truth is that uncertainty does not create love itself, but amplifies emotional activation that can be mistaken for love. It heightens attention, imagination, memory, and emotional sensitivity, all of which intensify how strongly feelings are experienced internally. But intensity is not always a reflection of depth. Sometimes it is simply a reflection of instability and unresolved emotional patterns. Understanding this distinction allows people to recognize when they are experiencing love and when they are experiencing emotional uncertainty instead.